Okay, so again, welcome to the Road to Recovery webinar tonight. I'm Hali Roderick. And Rachel, I'm excited to introduce you. This is my friend and colleague, Rachel Strong-Smith, who is a coach with us here at Choose Recovery Services. We got to just spend a weekend at a retreat together last weekend. And so feeling like we got to know each other even better and love and respect and admire Rachel. So thank you, Rachel, for joining me tonight as my guest on the Road to Recovery webinar. I'm going to put your bio in the chat so everybody can look that up. And those of you that are listening afterwards, you'll get this. It'll come in the email. But Rachel, I'm going to give you just a minute to introduce yourself and share with your audience anything that you want to know that you want them to know about you, and like what kind of clients do you like to work with, and tell us a little bit more about you.
All right, thanks. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me, Hallie. And I had such a great time meeting you as well. It was great. I am a coach with Choose Recovery Services, and I work with betrayed women. And I have walked that path of betrayal myself. I have my master's in social work, and I got it and like in 2005 and did not know this would be the next path for me. Stayed home, raised my babies, and now I'm back. And it's so great that I can use my not only the training from social work, but my lived experience to step into this space of coach and betrayal trauma.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. I did put the link to Rachel's full bio in the chat, so feel free to look at that. Before we jump into our topic tonight, Rachel, if it's okay, I'm going to share with our audience also the link to the announcements at Choose Recovery Services. This page on our website has everything you could possibly want to know about us at Choose Recovery Services. Oh, actually, I think the page I just gave you, it's the intensives page. Let me back up. I was going to highlight a couple of intensives. If you are a man working to find recovery and you get right on it, there's an men's intensive that's starting on Tuesday this week in Utah. You could probably still squeak in under the radar if that was something that you were drawn to. And then our next one for women is coming up April. I think the date on that is wrong. Oh, actually, that's correct. The next one for women is the brain spotting intensive with Amy Woolsey. It will be also held at our office in Spanish Fork, Utah, the April 10th through 12th. And then a couple weeks after that, we have the Courage to Thrive Betrayal Trauma Intensive, April 23rd through 26th, also in Spanish Fork, Utah. And registration for those is open. So that's actually the announcements that's not the announcement sheet, but let me get the announcement sheet for you. This page has links to our websites, the bios of all of our team, the groups that we offer, there's a whole bunch of stuff on there. Any links to any of the podcasts. Rachel, do you want to share a little bit about your new group for the book club that you're starting?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Yes, we have a recovery book study group coming up. This is a group for some education. I'll be leading it. We are going to be reading a specific book. This session, it's going to be Your Sexually Addicted Spouse, How Partners Can Heal and Cope, the second edition, important second edition. That starts this Thursday, but you can still register up until that point and jump on and see. This is a great opportunity just to get a place where it's kind of a focused information education self-study. I provide some worksheets to like look through things. We meet twice a month, and then we'll be talking about specific sections in the book. So I'm really, really excited about it, to just have a place to come together and really have some focused study about betrayal trauma and sexual addiction.
Okay, awesome. I'm excited for you for that. And you can find the link to register for that. We'll find it. I'll find it to register for that directly. And I'll put it in the chat once we get started here. So, okay. So thank you for all that. There's all of our announcements. We get all that out of the way. So when Rachel and I were talking about what topic to start out with tonight, I was excited when she suggested emotional literacy. And because our audience here tonight is men and women, could be female betrayed partners, male betrayed partners, there's can be any mix of things. We're going to try and talk about our topic from like both sides. So we're going to try not to sexualize either side of this, but talk about emotional literacy from the standpoint of both spouses, because I think it's critical for the healing and recovery for both people, whether you're the one seeking recovery or you're the one recovering from betrayal. It's important for all of us to understand this. And so, Rachel, I'm going to let you kind of introduce the topic of emotional literacy, because I hear a lot of different terminology around emotional intelligence, emotional awareness, regulating your emotions, managing your emotions, just a ton of different like things. And sometimes the word emotion is a big word that maybe we weren't raised in a family where like emotional awareness or we had a lot of space for emotions. So tell us more about what you mean when you're talking about emotional literacy.
Yeah, and definitely that's exactly like this is for all of us, right? Like talking about emotions, what are they? What does this mean? It is a big word, it is a big topic. When I say emotional literacy, I kind of think of it as like in reading, there's an ability to read and then there is literacy, right? Like you can read and have low literacy where you're not understanding the text, you're not able to like comprehend like what's happening. And so encompassing the scope of emotions, I really it's I want to break it down to like what are emotions? What are feelings? What is happening and what is this, And the literacy part is just that leaning into awareness, to understanding, getting to know yourself, what emotions feel like in you. This is like not somebody else's definition. We can look at that, but then I want to really internalize what it feels like in me to have a specific emotion or body sensation that we call a name of an emotion.
I love that. When I was first starting out in my own work, like I could tell you what the big emotions were, but I couldn't tell you anything about, like I could tell you I was angry, but I couldn't tell you anything else about the anger, just that I knew I was angry and I was having I actually didn't really even have a lot of awareness of like the physical response that my body was having. And that was some of the most important work that I have done in my own healing journey, is like being able to make sense of what my body is telling me and then being able to put language to it so that I can like make sense of it. So I'm excited that we're talking about this and I love the way that you framed that. So where do you want to start? Like where,
Yeah.
someone that's just figuring this out, where should we start?
Okay. Let's jump in. I made a slideshow because that helps me kind of stay like with it, but still, of course, any Q&A that's coming in, let's look at that. Anything that's kind of in this topic, let's tackle those first, and then the outside topics, we'll make sure to leave time enough to do that because I don't have like a ton. This is just broad overview, also with a lot of resources I want to provide you with that you can start exploring this on your own.
Awesome.
So let me share my screen. Okay. All right. Can you see that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, first, what are emotions, right? And what are feelings? We use these things kind of interchangeably. I just kind of grabbed some definitions to kind of put this in that kind of made sense to me of what this is. So, emotions are consciously or subconsciously experienced. It is the physiological experience or like the state of awareness that gives you information about the world. So, like a biological response, it's usually happening quickly and unconsciously. It can be described as the raw data. It's those physical sensations like heart rate, muscle tension. Like right now, I feel a little nervous being here, and so like my breathing's a little tight, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm noticing that, right? And so that would be emotions. Now, this is semantics. Call it what you want. There is a physiological sensation that is happening. And then we could call feelings our conscious awareness of the emotion itself. So the labeling of that emotion, maybe the cultural context of that emotion. Like for me to say, oh, I'm feeling nervous, that would be labeling my feeling. For me to say, oh, my heart is beating and I'm out of breath would be the emotional experience. So, and again, I'm not really caught up too much on the words as much as that these two things are happening. Um, they can be described as like feeling hurt, right? Maybe we say, oh, I feel really hurt or I feel bad. And that is like, we're labeling it, whereas this is saying like experiencing the raw emotion of anger. So, whatever the physical sensation of anger is, or the physical sensation of sadness. Okay. And so here it was Carla McLaren that I looked up a lot of. I liked what she said about emotions versus feelings. So this is something that I created to just try to like bring it down. So we have a lot of things happening to us. And like facts and statements are what we can observe, right? We're seeing it, and I'll get into more detail. Thoughts and ideas, that's like what I'm thinking. I have an idea about this, I have a story about this. Then we can get down further, labeling an emotion. That's happy, sad, nervous, excited, all of those, apprehensive. Then here's those physical sensations. These are the ones that get overlooked. We want to immediately go up here because this is actually where the pain is. Those physical sensations, that's the heart. That's the pain, that's the constriction, right? So I kind of went through and went it big to small. So facts and statements. This is I am. That didn't happen. I heard. I noticed. You never. I always. So these are just statements. And, as far as facts and statements, true or not, it is kind of irrelevant. It just, you're saying this happened. Like you didn't take out the trash. That's a statement. That's not a feeling. That's not an emotion, but there might be more under it, right? So those thoughts and ideas are like, well, I don't like this. This is unfair. This is the story. This means da 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 da. People are like this. And then my favorite, I feel like you don't care about me. That's not a feeling. That is a
Mm-hmm.
thought or an idea. That is, I think you don't care about me. I think that you don't like, okay, the trash. I think you don't value our home and partnership. Those are thoughts and they are valid. None of these are invalid. It's just let's keep them in the category and we know what we're saying. But to say, I feel like you don't care about me is not stating a feeling. The feelings are our famous feeling wheels, right? We see these.
Mm-hmm.
They're words, they're cognitive definitions. They are that, okay, if I went to, let's do the garbage one, and I'm probably feeling pretty angry. Let's say like, you know what? I am feeling, let's say I'm feeling furious. I'm furious that you didn't take out the garbage. That's what I'm feeling. All of these things, I'm going to label it that. All right, there's a feeling. Let's go deeper. And this is where we really get it. I couldn't fit this in the circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm like, and there's so many more words. This is like thinking about how I would describe it to a doctor. So if I come to the doctor and I'm trying to describe a physical sensation, I'm going to be like, okay, so I've got this high energy. It's a really intense ache that is tingling in my, and then here we go, in my heart, my chest, my hands, my ears, my head, right anywhere, my gut. And there's some ones that kind of are more, chest, gut, heart, head, neck. We feel that. So that's kind of just like a big overview of like what happens. So I want to kind of pause there and like, Hallie, what do you think? What are we, what are you seeing? What do you think? What has been your experience?
I think this is so important because I was just thinking back to like where, and I am still practicing all of this, but where I've gotten what I went from just being able to say, man, I'm angry, And then like my best friend is the emotion wheel. All my clients know that I have them all over my house, but I have one sitting right here. Like I'm always like, okay, what's the emotion wheel? Because I need to be able to put language to what's underneath the bigger emotion. And then the more the work that I've done, I've gotten to this where now it's like, oh man, there's that like intense physical reaction. So I went from not even noticing it at all, or maybe noticing it, but it was, I don't know, it wasn't like what was on the front of my mind, to now that's the thing I'm starting to notice first is that, holy cow, there's that like intense, just flooding of sensations. I'm feeling that like my heart rate increased, got that burning in my stomach. And interesting, I wonder what that's trying to tell me. So my thought process has gone from like, oh, I'm angry and I don't know why. I'm stepping it down into like me putting words to it. But now I'm noticing that more often I'm noticing the physical sensation first and then going deeper. And that's helped me a lot to be able to like not only make sense of it, but also like I also have learned some skills to help me like regulate what's happening in my body so that I can get out of my emotional brain and back into more of a logical brain. Because when I'm in my emotional brain, it's not always value based, and my emotions driving the bus doesn't always, I don't always feel good about it later. That's when I say things and do things that I would not really happy about later. So recognizing these, I love the way you've broken it down in a very simple way. And this is important, this physical sensation to me, because a lot of times when I'm working with clients and helping them try to develop some of these skills, they have a hard time when I ask them what do they notice in their body, they instantly go to describing the feeling again without, and I say, okay, and where in your body? Is it in your heart? Is it in your chest? Is it in your gut? And they have to really take a step back and go, oh, I don't know. I don't know, and think about it. But this is so important to like bring it around to the other, like you're noticing all of the things at once. So
Mm-hmm.
I love how you've broken it down there.
Yes, thank you for your just your experience and your insight because that is and I it makes sense why we don't want to go to the body. And I think it was you, Hallie, were we talking? You're like, that's where the pain is, that's where it is. It's like, oh, but that is where the healing comes. And I'm not suggesting that if we are brand new into this, like that you dive head first and you're like, all right, bring it on. Take it slow,
Yeah.
little bites at a time, have support because this can get very overwhelming very quickly. And so all we're doing is noticing, am I in my head? Am I in just facts? Am I in thoughts and ideas? Am I in labeling? Am I able to just touch into that body and it takes practice and it takes little by little, okay, what is this feeling like, and trusting it. Our bodies are here for a reason. They are amazing with the information that they can give us,
Hmm.
sources of information. It's fascinating, and sometimes we get really disconnected from that.
Yeah. Can I just say one thing about that too? First of all, I'm going to pause and remind our audience that you're welcome to use the Q&A button to submit your questions for us. But one thing that you just said kind of stands out to me is that when we're working with people to reestablish trust, I think that when you're working to trust yourself again, that this is really valuable and important work, is being able to notice what your body is telling you and trust it. Because if we can't trust ourselves, we're going to have a really hard time trusting other people. And so this is like foundational to the work of rebuilding trust in ourselves. And we need to trust ourselves before we can trust anybody else. So I love that you pointed that out.
Mm, absolutely. I 100% that has been my experience. And I believe that foundationally, trusting ourselves, trusting our body. And it can be really hard after experiencing betrayal and addiction because that is a total disconnect from self and body. And
Hmm.
that is, in my opinion, recovering is the definition of coming back into connection with self, recover the self.
Yeah. Would you want to spend just a minute on that, like the importance of it with someone who is healing from betrayal and learning to try and trust themselves and others again, and also the importance of it for someone who is working in recovery from an addiction or other sexual misbehaviors. Like, tell me more about those different pieces and how it applies to both.
Mm, yeah. I mean, I just think this is the key to this place, right? Like that we are each individually coming to that reconnection to self. And just like you said, how do you trust somebody else if you don't trust you, right? And again, on both sides, on both sides. And it's like, okay, and how do you move through life if you don't know what's happening in you? How do you have a relationship with anybody when you don't know what's happening inside of here? And it's crucial I believe, everyone to get into that alignment with self in whatever way that like makes sense. You know, there's a lot of different modalities, a lot of different exercises, a lot of different, I mean, so many, and find the one that really resonates with you, that is coming back to like connecting to self. And again, I think that for just people in general, our goal in life is to just find that center in self.
Hmm.
And I have seen that that is the healing process.
Yeah. I think too about those recovering from addiction or other sexual misbehaviors is that a lot of times, um, and I don't have a source on this, so don't quote me on this, but like what I know about that is that a lot of times the acting out has come in response to some sort of pain that we're trying to mask or avoid or cover up or whatever avoidant tendency that we're turning to. And so really getting more clear on what our emotions are and having some literacy and some tools around processing them in a healthy way is one of the foundational things to healing from an addiction or from other sexual misbehaviors or any behavior that is outside of our value system. Is we have to know what we've been masking or covering up before so that we can now look at them with different eyes and process them in a more healthy way and use different skills and coping mechanisms so that we stay aligned with who we want to be. So I think it's just a critical piece of the recovery journey for someone recovering from an addiction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I was going to say too, like that masking part. Okay, let's see if I can get it back. All right, I might not be able to get it back. But yes, yes, exactly. And that is, oh, here it is. I found it. That when we can come to that place, the validation comes from inside of that trusting our body and self. And we're not, what I see is sometimes it's like, oh, cool, I found the emotion. And then I bring it and be like, Kate, you got to validate this. You got to tell me this is okay. And it's like, when we're in that place on either side, we're going to be back and forth, right? Or trying to prove that my emotion was right, or yours was wrong, or, you know, and it's really just, this is what I'm experiencing.
Mhm.
This is, and it's up to me to kind of look at what is that, where are my values, right? There's all these things coming in. That's all the processing that's happening. That's the slowing it down, looking at it, taking a minute, and then, okay, whew, here's where here I am, you know.
Okay, so my brain went a couple of different places. I have to make it so I don't forget. Okay, so the first thing you said that I was like, yes, is that validation coming from inside, the internal validation. That is such a big piece of this. And that is one of the things when I work with couples that I see that we're working to always like step out of. I'm not saying that it's not okay to validate other people. That's not what we're
Mhm.
saying. But if you're looking for someone else's validation in order for you to be okay, that's when it becomes a problem. And needing that kind of steps out. I hate the word codependent, but it's kind of a codependent pattern or a codependent habit, which when we're relying on that from someone else, there's really a piece of us that we're missing that's not whole. And so finding that internal validation because you're so aligned with, like, you know what's going on for you and you can verbalize it. You can see it clearly with, confidence and clarity from a value-based place. That is important, because if you're there and someone else doesn't understand it, you don't want to like move off your solid foundation just to please someone else. So finding that internal validation is such a big piece of this for both partners. So I love that you brought that up. Do you want to add anything else to that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, I love that because really that is the key to intimacy. And
Mhm.
I've heard that stated into me, see, right? Like when I love this piece, it's been so amazing as I've stepped into what real intimacy is and connection. It's I come and I say, like when I shared with you guys that I was having like kind of shallow breathing and my heart was that was showing a little bit inside of me, that was, but I can't show that if I don't know that that's happening. And so as I show that and I'm like, hey, this is what's happening to me, and then someone else shows what's happening to them, and in a partnership, in a relationship, in connection, it's like, wow, okay. And now we're here in this plane of this is what's happening for me, what's happening for you. Oh wow, curiosity in myself, curiosity about the other person.
Mhm. Okay. I'm trying to decide whether to go to the question or my next thought, because you just kind of led me into my next thought. So let me go into that and then we'll come back to this question, which I think we just need to build on a little bit. But so this is one of the biggest challenges I see with couples recovering from betrayal and all of this, is that they don't have space for the other person's experience. And so when one of you is sharing something and the other one instantly has a, well, that's not true, or that's not how that happened, or that's not this, then we get fireworks because you're both feeling invalidated by the other one. And so what you just said of like a seeking to understand from a mutual, like a mutual genuine desire to understand what the other person is experiencing. I'm not saying you have to agree with what the other person is experiencing. You don't have to, you could be sitting in the same interaction and have a totally different experience or opinion about what just happened. I'm just saying that we have to sit with curiosity, with seeking to understand questions like, okay, help me understand what you meant. Help me understand what that's like for you. Tell me more what you mean by that. Okay, interesting. Instead of going, that's not what I meant. That's not what I said. Or in a sense, you're saying you shouldn't feel that way, right? Even if you don't say it out loud, you're saying your feelings are not valid because that's not what I intended, or that's not what I thought, or that's not what I said, or that's not how it happened. Basically, you're saying whatever you just said and whatever you just shared, probably from a vulnerable place, isn't valid. And I'm going to shut that down because it's making me uncomfortable. And so seeking that was my second thought a minute ago that I had to write down. Listening with non-judgment for the experience of the other person's. If we could all get to that place, I think we would make a big shift in relational repair when we seek to understand. And I think a good like self-evaluation for me anyway is when I'm in a conversation and I already know what I'm going to say as soon as the other person shuts their mouth. I'm not actually listening to understand. I'm listening to respond. I have a rebuttal, or I have a defense, or I have a something that is going to like shut that down because I don't like it. It's making me uncomfortable and I don't feel good about it. And so if I am already ready with a response, that's my cue to go, okay, hold on just a minute. Let me take a step back. Let me take a deep breath and let me just hear. Let me just listen to what they're sharing. And back to when I said, even if you don't understand it, if you and your spouse are like on opposite ends of the field of understanding something, you need to know that. Like if you think that it's black and they think that it's white, and your beliefs and your values and your experience don't line up at all, okay, that's good information for you. Like you need to know that you're not even close to the same page. And that is information, even if you don't agree with it. It's like, okay, that's good for me to know that that's how you perceive that, or that's what your thoughts are on that. Okay, I need to think about that. We're not trying to change it, not trying to fix it, just observing and taking it in for information.
Mhm.
Anything
Yeah.
else you add with
Ooh,
that?
yeah. Man, like, and key here is you can never persuade somebody else to know their own reality because like you want, so here I'll speak from I wanted to understand my husband's perspective and his reality and what was going on in his emotional experience. I truly wanted to know that. He didn't know his. So there was
Mm,
no way for him to share it with me. As much that, I mean, I begged and pleaded, what's happening? I don't know, was his answer. And I thought he's got to just be lying and hiding it because, and yes, there are all the lies and stuff because he truly didn't know. Doesn't make excuse. It does not negate the impact. It doesn't mean that the intention makes it so it's, not an impact. We truly could not know him. That that was just when I finally accepted that, I was like, oh, okay. All right. When you know you, come let me know. I'm ready to hear it. But in the meantime, it means we are not close because
mhm.
I can't know you when you don't know you.
Yeah. And like, ouch, my heart just hurts when you say that. Like, there's sadness and grief around that
Absolutely.
for both of you. Like when that,
So much.
but it's also a very clear place of where the work needs to start. Well, for both of you to like, okay, I have to surrender this because I can't change that. I can't fix that. I can't make him know himself. I have to
Mm-hmm.
get really good at knowing myself.
Mm-hmm.
And my body's telling me so that I can trust me more than I trust anybody else. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a hard place to be.
So hard. So, and just so much grief. Like I can speak about that now because I am at a different place, but like it does not give it justice, my words, because the grief of realizing that my person who I want to know, I want to have connection and intimacy with, it isn't possible right now.
Yeah. And for the people that are working recovery to like they don't know themselves, it's a scary place for them to be too. That's been my experience with the clients I've worked with. It's like I don't even know where to start. Like where do I even start?
Which yeah goes into our question.
Yes. So the question is, how do you get
Do
to
it.
finding internal validation? I'll let you start with it, Rachel.
Let's do it because oh wait, let me share screen again. Because it leads right into thank you. And whoever was saying that, thank you. Because it is my next slides. So, all right. I've got just this is an emotion wheel, another one. I really like it. It's an emotion sensation. And so it goes through like the different feelings, right? Of like experiencing hollow feeling, right? Down to like maybe despair into that sad or the other way around. So I really like this one. This is Lindsay Brahman, and you can go on her site. She has awesome PDFs to purchase. Okay, another one I really like human systems. Have you seen this one, Hallie?
I have not seen that one. I
Oh
like
my gosh, it is amazing. This is like exactly what I'm talking about. So, human systems, it's got these sensation wheels. I'm going to go into some closer ones. So, this breaks it down into actions, functions, and movements. I'm not going to go through like a bunch of these just because you can look this up, human systems, make a note, and go look at what they have. They've got a video kind of explaining how to do this, but like they look at it in movements. So, like swirling, quivering, sad. Oh, they're kind of like intense, not intense, negative, positive, whatever, however it makes sense to you. Actions in this, like these are the actions of like breathing, like and nauseous. It's like your body actions. And then you have this other place of space, pressure, temperature, and composition. And so you can be looking at, okay, how much pressure is it? So we're really refining, honing in. What does this feeling feel like? Like picture yourself going to the doctor and describing because they don't know what's inside you, right? I mean, they can look into it with imaging, but let's say we're in the old timey where they can't even use MRIs. They want to know precisely like does this feel constricted, right? Does it feel clogged? Does it feel tight, clenched? Temperature, are you hot? Are you cold? Is it burning? This composition, is it weak? Is it electric? Is it strong, soft? So those give you words. That's what we're looking for, refining. And truly, it doesn't matter what these words mean to you. You get to decide, what does empty feel like for you? And then you can label it. You know what that feels like. I have one that I call sandpaper. That is when I know that I have cognitive dissonance. And that was my very first body sensation word. I was like, I feel like sandpaper in my stomach.
Mhm.
I won't go into this one because this one is really cool too, but it's Plutchik wheel. So take a look at that one too. Again, use what makes sense to you. Use what, like, okay, this resonates. But he has these really cool, like, man, he goes into these primary opposite. He uses color, he uses dimension. It's a really cool way to just like hone in. So that would be the foundational, is like really honing in. And then here is Allison Reeves has this awesome step by step. Like, this is about finding that validation in self. So validating self is just acknowledging, yes, this is happening. This is my reality,
Yeah.
regardless of what other people experience.
I was going to ask you to define that. That was the next question that came in, is what do you mean by internal validation? So thank you for
Okay.
doing that.
Yes. So, internal, I'm going to say it again, internal validation, acknowledging the reality that you are experiencing is the reality. Like, you are experiencing it. We like to get so cognitive, like, well, but, and especially if there has been gaslighting and, minimization and justification in self or from others. And usually it is both. And so, like, we get into this, well, I'm feeling this, but maybe not. And like, talk yourself out of what is happening, or somebody else is talking you out of it. So here is Allison Reeves part. She has 3 parts. So find the feeling. So we're going to ground ourselves. We're going to connect with our body, right? And immediate surroundings. And we're just like, here I am. This is what's happening. Now we're going to recognize and label those emotions. We're really going without judgment. This is key, because so often we get right into there and like, okay, let's do I was nervous to be up here, right? Let's see how I can do this with like, if I come in and I'm like, I shouldn't be worried. I shouldn't be nervous. Everything's fine. Hallie's a nice person. I'm sure that these people are going to be all right with me. Well, that's all fine and good, but I truly am experiencing nerves. Like, that is what's happening. That's all that's happening here. So that's the coming in without judgment. I'm not a bad person for experiencing nerves. I just simply am. And actually leaning into that, it's very surprising for me. It has been like, oh, I'm experiencing nerves. This is what it feels like, right? And here it is, exploring it more deeply. Now we're finding the edges, we're leaning in, describing the intensity, the boundaries, we're experiencing it. We're not holding back, we're not trying to avoid it. We're like, whoa, what does nerves feel like? Right? Like getting like a scientist. Whoa, what does this feel like? And again, practice, take it slow, have support. Like, this is a practicing thing. Start by those little ones that's well, they're not little, the ones that are obvious actually are the ones we're like, whoa, what does this feel like, right? And then you get refining. So now we're into find the sensation. So we're going to look more deeply. Okay, what is this sensation? Tension, warmth, changes in breath, heart rate, right? This is where we're staying grounded with that and finding the edges and leaning into now the physical sensation. I would say you can go either way, right? Like, I think it's easier to get to that feeling word first and then go into body. But if you want to go body to feeling, absolutely. Like, whatever makes sense to you.
I'd
So
say
we're
whatever you notice first. That's what I always say.
exact.
Notice first.
Yes.
If you notice
Whatever you
the physical response, let's start with that.
definitely. Yep, that's what I'd say. So these are, yeah, she calls them parts or step. I don't know. I don't. They're not in order. Do what what you will. So we're observing those physical boundaries, right? The intensity, and allow yourself to fully experience them. Like, find a safe place. Sometimes you're not in a safe place to be able to feel them. So a lot of times you can kind of visualize, like, I will get to you, and truly get to it. Like, this isn't an avoidant tactic. This is a, hey, feeling, I will get to you when I come to a safe place, and then return back to it which helps with self-trust and self-validation because your self can trust that you'll come back to this. So, sometimes it's just not in life, right? We can't just like, oh, but take a minute when you have safety. And then again, we're curious, we're non-judgmental. Let's really, that is where that self-validation really comes. Let's explore, let's get deeper. Let's really allow this to just let me look at it, right? And then we're looking at the resource. So now we've kind of looked at all of this. This has been a lot, right? Okay, what is the need? Like underlying need, desire to connect with the emotion. Emotions often signal unmet needs. Identifying the need is an essential part of the process. Lean into the feeling of the need, like kind of look at, okay, what is this unmet need? That's why, like, our bodies are designed to give us information. And then we can look at that emotional aspect of the need. Again, looking at that physical sensation, what does that feel like to have this unmet need? It can give more insights. And then she gave these needs that I like them. There's sustenance, autonomy, security, belonging, to be loved, meaning, self-actualization, safety, to be heard, to be seen, to be understood, connection, recreation, other, you know. And then I found needs wheels in the human systems, like so many needs, right? So many needs. And then here's where it gets kind of tricky. All right, I've got this need. Why isn't he, she, whoever meeting those needs, right? In relationship. And this is where we get a little tricky. And I'm not going to go into it way right now because we're close to time. But that becomes quite another, okay, now we're into needs. Where does that go? And the truth is you only have control over yourself. All right, I have a need for safety. Okay, I am not experiencing safety in this space. What do I need? Yeah, wouldn't it? Okay, I'm going to tell you. I told my therapist. So she's like, I was frustrated. It was after disclosure. I was not doing well. It was hard. I was like, and I was mad. And I was like, I just, and I'm expressing it. And she's like, all right, well, what do you need? I'm like, you know what I need? I need him to cut this crap out and bring me some safety. That's what I need. And he's like, okay, what do you need? And I'm like, I was like, oh, I see what you're doing here. You're okay. Yes, I do need safety, and I don't have it right now. And there it is, right? And so I had some more distance, and that's where I found my safety in the proximity and frequency in which I could engage with him at that time. And that was really sad and hard. And I didn't want that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think anybody ever really desires that. And sometimes it's necessary and needed. I want to just share a couple things that came up for me with that last question of, can you describe what do you mean by internal validation? And as I was thinking about it, you mentioned the gaslighting. So if there's been gaslighting, which usually there has been, if there's betrayal, there's been some sort of misrepresentation of what reality is, or trying to not let you see what's actually happening over here. And so internal validation in a situation like that, if you're the betrayed partner and you have a new awareness, you're seeing the world through new eyes, and you see something, but there's gaslighting happening. The internal validation comes from, okay, well, I know what my body was telling me there, that something's off. And I know what I saw with my eyes, and I know what I'm hearing, but what my body's telling me and what I saw with my eyes tell me the truth, regardless of what the words I'm hearing over here, whether they match up what I'm seeing. So that's internal validation, is going, okay, I see what he or she is saying, and I also know what I felt, and I know what I saw. And so that's internal validation, is trusting that what your body is telling you and what your eyes are telling you, what you can see with your eyes, not like the story that's being created, because a lot of times our minds are creating stories that aren't necessarily true. So I like to do a reality check of going, okay, if I could replay this on a game film, what would I actually see with my eyes? So reality, I call that a reality check for me. What do I see with my eyes, and what is my body telling me? And then I go with that until proven wrong. I have a right to be wrong, but I'm going to trust what my body's telling me, and I'm going to trust what I'm seeing with my eyes. So that's an example that came to my mind of like internal validation. And then I also was thinking on the opposite side, because I've run a couple of episodes, couple groups of Help or Heal for guys for men who are working to rebuild trust and create safety. And a lot of that work is shame resiliency. And they have to get to where they can validate themselves, knowing that what I've done does not define me. And that does not have to say, it doesn't have to, I don't have to have this label of what I've done for the rest of my life. And when you're in the middle of like early on recovery work, your spouse may not be able to see that. They may only see that this is what you've done and this must be who you are. And so that internal validation of going, okay, this pain is about the things that I've done or the choices that I've made. They are not about who I am today or who I am as a person. These are about choices and behaviors that I've made. And so that's internal validation on like the recovery side is I have to have that, because also if I'm looking for that validation from my spouse, that's not recovery. That's not recovery. Like you need to be able to stay firm in that. And that can be really hard when you have a spouse who's in a ton of pain and they might be saying things that feel the opposite of that because all they can see is their pain. And so that's internal validation on the recovery side. So I just had those like two kind of examples. I don't know if that helps with that question of what do you mean by internal validation, but having a knowing and an understanding that's coming internally and not expecting it or needing it from an external person or source. So hopefully that helps. I don't know, anything you would add to that?
I just want to also acknowledge and validate the difficulty of that, like that it is a painful process to go from external validation to internal validation, especially like with gaslighting and all of that. Like we self gaslight too, again, whether it's coming externally or in, like there is, and it has taken me still, I have to pause and be like, okay, this really is what I'm experiencing, because I've got voices and parts and coming in programs that have been built for decades, that it's like, okay, and again, regardless of which side you're on, that is what's happening, right? And whether that's shame or the, you know, guilt or whatever it is, wherever it's coming from, it's like, okay, this really is where I am. And sometimes we want to skip that, like what I'm feeling. Again, we go back to that body sensation, the emotional literacy. Sometimes we want to skip over that to go to the solution, but it actually is within this space that we find the internal validation. Okay, I really am feeling this without having to, and this was key. I don't now have to what over explain or justify why I'm feeling what I'm feeling to prove it. Oh man, I was in the proving business so much, and then all we're doing is talking in logic, right? And as soon as I stepped into my truth, I was like, I am feeling this. And my spouse was trying to go to the logic game. No, that's not true. No. And I was like, yeah, it is for me. It doesn't have to be for you.
There's a couple things. So it makes me think of what we're talking about here is that move out of like codependent patterns. And I'll tell you, if you haven't heard me say this before, I don't like the word codependent because it insinuates that there's like something wrong with you. And I believe we pick up codependent patterns. We probably all do because of experiences we've had where we've had to like protect ourselves or create our own safety or things like that. So I don't know a better term for it. I wish there was a better term.
Survival coping, really.
Yeah, coping
It's
mechanisms, survival
survival.
mechanisms. Yes. But we have to pull out of those when we're in this when we're in recovery, working on recovery. We're like intertwined when things happen. And then we have to pull into this almost uncomfortable place of independence where we're like only learning to trust ourselves. And that uncomfortable but so important part is critical to be able to step back in together in an
Mhm.
interdependent dance rather than stepping back into this like codependent mess we found ourselves in before.
Mm.
So if you're finding yourselves like pulling into that independent phase, which is uncomfortable, then it's important that you just stick with it. Um, I also have to say, do you have something else you want to add to that?
Just amen and
Okay.
yes.
I don't know why this is coming to my mind, but I'm going to say it because it's coming up for me. So I don't know if somebody here needs to hear it or what, but when we're trying to break patterns, right? If you have children in the mix of all this and they're experiencing whatever they're experiencing while they're witnessing you and your spouse going through this healing journey, I think one of the most important things, which I learned a little too late, so learn from my mistakes, but what I wish I could do could I go back, is I would have validated my own children's experience with what they're seeing. Because I promise you, they're seeing more than you think they are. And they're making up stories. If they're not getting information from you, they're making up stories about what they think is happening. And so if they're coming to you, I would really encourage you to get curious about their experience, validate. And as my daughter told me, it was gaslighting when I said, it's okay, everything's fine, there's nothing to worry about. I don't like to think of myself as a gaslighter. I don't think anybody does, but that's in essence, what we're doing when we're telling our kids, no, it's fine, don't worry about anything, but they can see that it isn't. So I would encourage you to share as much as information with them as their age appropriate can handle, but validate their experience and let them know that, yeah, mom and dad are working on some things. And you're right, you are feeling tension, but it doesn't have anything, it's not your fault. There's nothing you need to do to fix it. Just reassure them, but validate their experience because then you're breaking a pattern that hopefully the generations to come after you will grow up validating themselves and don't have to do this messy work that we're all in right now.
Absolutely. I totally am right there with you. And really, I found the more that I can self validate, the more I can validate other people's experiences as their own, and I don't feel threatened by it.
Yeah.
So, when I'm in a space where I can't be okay with mine, I'm not okay when my child is having an emotional reaction either.
Hmm.
And I see we have a question. Should we address it?
Yep. Let's do.
Okay.
So
You want to read it?
it's the example of identifying the true need is really useful, but it's hard to create the space in the heat of the moment to do that. How do you create that space at those times? Yes, it is.
It is hard.
But go ahead, Rachel.
Okay, I'd say practice, practice, practice. And it really is like being able to go, okay, I need a moment, right? Disconnecting from the conversation, especially I noticed it for me, like when the conversations were happening. So an internal boundary that I made was if this conversation gets unproductive, I see minimization, gaslighting, and here was my key. If I felt sandpaper, there's where it came up for me. If I feel any sandpaper, if I feel any of this, I disengage and I go, I am going to walk away. And I was like, we'll talk later, if we can, and depending on level of safety and where we are and all the individual stuff. And then I would go and I would journal the crap out of it. I would sit with it. I would feel it. I would breathe it. I would cry it. I would like hold space for it with me. I would take it to therapy. I would take it to my coach. I would take it to group. I would sit with it. And so it's not instant. It's not like, oh, boom, 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 right? And the more practice I'm getting, that time, like that was like, I would take a week, 2 weeks for one emotional experience to try to like, oh, what was that? And then I have now like, I can kind of, okay, sometimes it's days, sometimes it's hours, sometimes it's a few minutes, but I've gotten in the practice of, whoa, I need a minute. And really in a safe and secure relationship, there is room for that.
Yeah. And I want to just point out your language there because you said, I need a minute. And it's about what's happening for me. Because what I see oftentimes is I hear it going back to the other person who's like, you're being mean or you're being irrational or you're being whatever. And I'm not talking to you when you're like this. And that's not really the relational way because really what's happening is that you're uncomfortable with what the way the conversation is going. And so really you're the one, if you're able to stay present in a difficult interaction and stay grounded and in a value-based way without getting escalated and saying things you're going to regret later, then you can stay in it longer. But if you're finding yourself unable to stay level-headed and you're finding yourself moving out of your own window of tolerance, then it is about you. Then I'm uncomfortable or I'm not able to stay present in this conversation and I need to take a break. I'm going to walk away. And I would also say to this that learn from your mistakes. So go back to the last couple of times when you didn't have safety in the conversation. And what could you have done differently that you might have tried to create that space and that safety? And then get a plan in your head for the next time there might be a difficult interaction and try whatever your new plan was. Taking some deep breaths, really checking in with your body, what's happening, practicing your language, saying, I need to take some space, I need a break, and then practicing it. And you keep hearing Rachel and I say that word practice. We're not kidding. Like, we're not kidding with practice. This isn't something that you can just like logically think about and then flip a switch and the next day you get to implement it. If it would, we'd all read one recovery book and we'd be good, right? But this is like a constant work of learning from your mistakes, trying again, making a new plan, paying attention to what your body's saying, and just continuing to learn and grow. And I loved your example, Rachel, because that's what like the healing journey, when you're first in this, it might take like, I don't know, like an an difficult interaction could pull you apart for like weeks early on. And then the more practice you get, then you can break it down into like maybe a week or a few days. And then you get down to where it's like a couple of hours. And then when you get into more recovery relational, which means you've both done your own individual work and your relationship is moving into more of a place of recovery, then you can get to where it's the hours or a few minutes. And it's not about not having conflict. It's about how well do you repair after there is a rupture. So letting conflict move you into connection. Not saying to create conflict, to move to connection, but just knowing that it's going to happen and getting really good at repairing whenever it does. And hopefully those times become few and far between as well. So, well, we could talk for hours if you can't tell. Rachel and I could talk all night, but we're going to respect your time tonight. So thank you so much for being here. Rachel, if it's okay with you, I'm going to ask if you don't mind sharing the links to those resources that you mentioned.
Mm,
And we'll send them out in the email so that everybody
mhm.
can find those, especially the people that are like tuning in afterwards. So we'll put some of those great links that Rachel mentioned in the email that comes out with the recording. And we are so grateful that you spent an hour with us tonight. Thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions, feel free to email info@chooserecoveryservices.com. Also in the email, Rachel and I's contact information will be there. So if you want to get in touch with either one of us, feel free to do that. We're here to help you and support you any way that we can. So again, thank you so much for being here. Rachel, thank you for coming and spending some time with me tonight. As always, enjoy it. So,
Thank you so much, Hallie. This has
okay.
been my pleasure.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.